Welcome to NFL Nexus. You know, sometimes in football, a story comes along that has everything. We're talking about the absolute highest of highs and the lowest of lows, all crashing together. Today, we're looking at a franchise at the very peak of its power, staring down a crisis that threatens to unravel it all. We've broken down all the key pieces for you, so let's get right into it. This is the story of the New England Patriots, and it's really a team fighting a war on two completely different fronts. On one side, you've got the meticulous, calculated, on-field planning, the kind of stuff you have to do to defend a championship. But on the other side, an absolute bombshell of an off-field scandal that just detonated and caught everyone completely off guard. It's like a perfect storm of success and maybe self-destruction.
So, let's set the stage here. After a season that was, frankly, unbelievable, the Patriots were sitting on top of the football world. But here's the thing about being the champion. The offseason becomes this incredibly fragile, critical window. It's the time when you either double down and fortify your dynasty for the future, or you get complacent, make a mistake, and accidentally lay the groundwork for your own collapse. The pressure was just immense.
And you really can't overstate how wild their journey was. Think about it. Mike Vrabel took a team that won only 4 games and got them to the Super Bowl in his very first year. That's not just a good coaching job. That is a historically great, almost miraculous turnaround. He was, rightfully, the toast of the entire league, the unanimous coach of the year. He was the architect of one of the most improbable comeback stories we have ever seen in this sport. But to keep that train rolling, to prove you're not just a one-year wonder, you absolutely have to nail the offseason, and that all starts with the NFL draft.
Okay, so let's dive into the actual football plan, right? Because every great team has one. For the Patriots, the front office's primary focus heading into that draft was crystal clear. It wasn't flashy, but it was essential. They had to get deeper and stronger in the defensive secondary. And what does that mean? It means they needed cornerbacks, and they needed a lot of them.
Now look, on the surface, you might think they were set. Christian Gonzalez, Carlton Davis, Marcus Jones. That is a fantastic star-studded trio at the top of the depth chart, no question. But here's the reality of the NFL. A 17-game season is a war of attrition. Guys get hurt. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Matchups change every single week. Trying to rely on just those 3 guys to hold up against the best offenses in the league for an entire season, that is a recipe for absolute disaster. The depth chart behind them was paper thin, which made the upcoming NFL draft not just important, but absolutely fundamentally crucial for adding talent and protecting their championship defense.
And you can see here, the scouting department had clearly done its homework. This wasn't some vague idea like, hey, we should draft a corner. No. This was a detailed, multi-layered plan. They had potential targets identified for pretty much every single round. We're talking a high-impact day-one starter like Chris Johnson in the first, a guy with elite traits like D'Angelo Pons in the second, then finding a diamond in the rough, a high-upside athlete like Charles Demings from a smaller school in the middle rounds, and then even grabbing a team captain, a leader like Colin Wright late in the draft. It's a comprehensive, top-to-bottom strategy. This is the hallmark of a well-run, championship-level organization.
And let's just zoom in on that first-round possibility for a second. Chris Johnson from San Diego State. We're not just talking about a guy who can cover somebody. This is an explosive, instinctive, game-changing athlete. Look at this, 2 interceptions returned for touchdowns. That tells you he doesn't just play defense. He scores points. He has a nose for the football and the end zone. Then you add in a 4.4 40-yard dash. That's legit track speed. He can run with any receiver in the league. This is the kind of methodical, strategic, championship-winning planning the Patriots are famous for. But while their war room was completely focused on this, a totally different kind of story was developing, far, far away from the football field.
And this quote just captures the feeling of it perfectly. While the team was meticulously building its draft board, a completely different story was about to just explode into public view. This wasn't a leak. It wasn't a rumor that got out of hand. This was a detonation. And it really felt like it was planned and timed to cause the absolute maximum impact just a few weeks before the draft.
So where does this all begin? Not in a film room, not in a scout's office in Foxborough. No, this story begins at a luxury resort right in the middle of the Arizona desert, a place that would very quickly become the epicenter of a massive media firestorm.
The timeline here is absolutely critical if you want to understand this story, so follow me on this. On March 27th, Mike Vrabel is doing his job. He's at Arizona State's Pro Day in Tempe, scouting college talent. This is standard operating procedure for any head coach. But the very next morning, March 28th, he's somehow 125 miles away in Sedona And what do you know? A paparazzi photographer just happens to be there to capture it all. And then, and this is the craziest part, there's a 10-day gap. The photos don't come out right away. Somebody sits on them, waits, until April 7th, when Page 6 publishes them, and the story goes completely nuclear. You have to ask yourself, what was happening in those 10 days?
And the context of where this happened is so important. This wasn't just some random Marriott. The Ambient Resort in Sedona charges over $2,000 a night, and it's marketed specifically as an adults-only destination for things like honeymoons and romantic getaways. As the source material points out, nobody accidentally books a resort that's designed for couples spa treatments and private rooftop stargazing just to have a casual professional meeting. The setting itself tells a huge, huge part of this story. And the story became infinitely more complicated and messy when you look at the people at the center of it. On one side, you have Mike Vrabel, the celebrated head coach, a guy who's been married to his wife Jennifer since 1999. They have 2 sons. On the other side, Deanna Rossini, a senior NFL insider for The Athletic, married since 2020, also with 2 young sons. The fact that both the subject of the news and the reporter who covers his league are married with families, well, it just added these deep layers of personal and professional complexity to what was already a really volatile situation. So as soon as those photos hit the internet, the situation just fractured into 2 completely conflicting realities. You had the carefully crafted narrative from the people involved, and then you had the story being told by the people who were actually there. It created this classic and very, very public case of he said, they said.
The official story landed fast. Diana Rossini claimed the photos were totally misleading, that they were actually part of a group of 6 people just hanging out. Her editor at The Athletic quickly came out and backed her up. But 3 independent eyewitnesses at the resort, all of whom were asked separately by Page 6, told a completely different story. They were adamant about it. There was no group. It was only the 2 of them.
And really, the entire conflict can be summed up in this one single, blunt quote. When an eyewitness was asked if they saw a group, the response was simply, no, he was with a girl. Witnesses went on to describe seeing the pair alone at breakfast, on the patio, then at the pool about an hour later, then sitting side by side in the hot tub, and then, get this, on a private rooftop at sunset, a rooftop that was apparently only accessible through one of the 2-person bungalow suites. Suddenly, that group of 6 stories started to look really, really shaky under the weight of these first-hand accounts.
And just like that, poof, the Patriots' meticulous, brilliant, well-thought-out draft plan. All those prospects, all that scouting, all that strategic planning we just talked about, it was completely and totally overshadowed. The narrative shifted overnight from building a championship team to managing a public relations nightmare. The most critical offseason window in their recent history was now completely dominated by a media firestorm centered on the head coach's personal life.
You know, this whole incident really pulled back the curtain on a much larger systemic issue in the world of sports journalism, a glaring lack of clear ethical guardrails. The source material we reviewed highlights that there are no formal ethics rules in NFL journalism that govern reporter-source intimacy. There are no disclosure requirements, no recusal protocols. This ambiguity allows for potentially compromising relationships to exist completely in the dark, with no oversight. And the sources also point out that this wasn't the first time Rossini had faced these kinds of allegations, citing a 2015 incident with a different NFL executive. The system as it stands basically allows these situations to operate in the shadows, totally unchecked, until a camera shows up.
So, with the NFL draft just weeks away at the time this all broke, the whole situation just leaves this trail of unanswered questions and potentially devastating consequences for the team, for the franchise, and of course, for the 2 careers at the very center of it all. The potential fallout here is huge, and it goes in so many different directions. For Mike Vrabel, he has to somehow walk back into that locker room and command the respect of 100 players who just watched their leader become a national punchline on TMZ. For Deanna Rossini, her employer, The Athletic, faces immense pressure to explain how she can objectively cover a league, let alone a team, when she was just photographed in such an intimate setting with its head coach. For the Patriots organization, it is the ultimate distraction at the absolute worst possible time. And for the NFL as a whole, it really forces a public reckoning with this massive gray area of journalist source intimacy that has been conveniently ignored for way too long.
And this brings us to one of the most jarring quotes from Mike Vrabel's past. Before that championship season, he famously said he would do anything. He would make the ultimate physical sacrifice to win a Super Bowl. It's a shocking statement, right? But it perfectly highlights the brutal irony of this entire situation. Here's a man who publicly proclaimed he would sacrifice everything for a championship.
Yet he became embroiled in a massive, reputation-damaging scandal, born from what appears to be a moment of personal indiscretion just 2 months after he reached that very goal. The irony is just staggering. Which leaves us with the final, and I think pretty provocative question. A team, a coach, an entire organization can spend months, even years, building the perfect game plan. But as the New England Patriots just discovered, a reputation, so carefully constructed over time, can be put in serious jeopardy in a single weekend. It forces us all to ask, in the high-stakes world of the NFL, what's truly more fragile, a game plan or a reputation? What do you think? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to NFL Nexus for more deep dives like this one. And hey, before you go, if you're looking for a way to support the channel, we've actually created some coloring books. They're perfect for kids, grandkids, or hey, even for adults. You can check them out using the link in the description or just scan the QR code on your screen now. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.